How's everybody? Good? Good, great. It's nice to be here. It's always fun to come here and talk with fellow PDers and very important support members as well. I just finished an hour-and-a-half lecture, and so this will be a good test as to whether my voice stays big. You know how to practice that, right? And so as I speak, and if I say anything that you want to react to or don't agree with or want to add to, just shout it out, okay? I'll leave time for questions and answers afterwards, but if you want to say something, just shout it out. You just have to make a big voice for me, okay? As Jackie said, I have PD. I have PD, and I'm beating the hell out of it, beating it badly. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that. I was diagnosed, 6.5, 7 years ago. And what I'd like to do is tell you a little bit about me so it helps you understand where I'm coming from. But also I'd like to talk about sort of 3 stages in my life that began 7 years ago. About myself, I am a researcher at Ohio State University. As Jackie said, I'm a neuroscientist. I study the brain, chemistry, and schizophrenia. But ironically, for the first 12 years of my career, I studied Parkinson's disease. And so I actually know more about PD than I'd like to know about PD, except I know that with good support and with good care and good people around and loving people to help support you, I know that it is a disease that can be beaten, and beaten in a way that you can maintain your lifestyle as long as you possibly can. And that's what I want to talk about. So I'm a professor of neuroscience and psychiatry and psychology at Ohio State. I run a $1 million research laboratory investigating schizophrenia. For 15 years, I worked for the Department of Athletics at Ohio State, where I helped to, not on the field, but off the field, helped to bring in 2 national championships, and so I'm proud of that. And I just recently became engaged. And this is my beautiful bride-to-be, Dr. Valentini here, who's from Italy. Part of the time I spend in Italy, and I hope to retire in Italy in the not-too-distant future. But let me tell you a little bit about where I've been over the last 7 years. I was diagnosed, as I said, 6-7 years ago, and I remember that day. I'll never forget that day, as some of you won't forget that day either. I was over at the center on Hamilton Road and had a checkup and in neurology, and the neurologist said, "Dr. Bruno, I think you have early stage Parkinson's." I said, "You got to be kidding me." And then we talked a little bit more and a little bit more, and my whole body just sunk. I just crashed. I felt like somebody had just given me a death sentence. I felt like my world had been taken away from me. I felt like my life had been taken away from me. I felt like my future had been taken away from me. I felt violated. I remember going into the men's room at the Hamilton Center and going into the bathroom and being sick. And was very emotional. And then I started thinking about it, and fortunately I think a lot of my training kicked in about how to deal with stress and how to deal with stressors, and how to cope, and what are the things that get you into trouble, and what are the things that help you. And one of the things I started to do, even on my ride home, my drive home from that horrible, horrible morning, I started formulating a plan. And I started saying, nobody's taken anything away from me. I'm not giving up on anything. And it's part of my personality. I don't like to lose. I don't like to not do things that, I don't like doing things that, I don't like bosses, even though now I'm a big boss. I don't like people telling me what to do when I don't want to do it. And I thought to myself, I think I was probably 56 at the time, 54, 55, something like that. And I said, this isn't going to be it. I've got a whole lot of plans. I got a whole lot of activity. I felt good. I still feel great. I move around, I exercise, I have a tremor in this hand. But other than that, I feel real good. And I started thinking about lessons that I had learned as being a psychologist in psychiatry. And one of the lessons that I learned about stress was, and we've known this for hundreds of years, folks, that when stress becomes its most damaging, when it becomes its most diabolical, when it becomes its most consuming, is when you think you have no control. Okay? In psychology, we call that learned helplessness. You may have heard that term, but when you think that something's happening to you adversely, negatively, and you have no control over it, that's a real recipe for disaster. And we start to think, well, hell, there's nothing I can do about this. It's going to happen to me. It's a neurodegenerative disease. There's nothing that I can do. And of course, you know, as part of this wonderful Delay the Disease program, there's a lot that you can do. And so the first thing I had to do was convince myself that this was not learned helplessness. This was not a death sentence. This was not anything other than another bump in the road. A bump in the road that I have jumped over time and time and time again. And so maybe it was a little cocky. Maybe it was a little delusional. Maybe it was a little something. But what it was a style that invigorated me and told me that I wasn't going to let it slide. I wasn't going to let myself slide. I wasn't going to deny myself all the things that I was still living to do and wanting to do. And I wasn't going to let this disease take it away from me. And I think that's the first lesson that I can leave with you, is fight back. Okay? It's in our DNA. It's in our Constitution to defend things that mean something to us. And what could mean more to us, to you and me, than our ability to move, and our ability to interact, and our ability to speak, and our ability to care and to love. These are things that make us who we are, and they're things that can't be taken away from us lightly. And so when I got home, I started writing down a list, which I still have today, a list of things that I like to do, things that bring me pleasure, and things that I thought would bring me pleasure that I hadn't had a chance to do yet. Okay? Like travel the world, like stop working so hard and retire, like spend some time with this beautiful woman. There were lots of things I wanted to do, and so I made a list of them, and I said, and I was going to keep them, and I was going to see how many I could avoid from checking off over the years to save them. I played about 29 years at high-level competitive tennis when I was growing up. And the first thing I was going to do was not let this take my tennis game away. And about a year and a half ago, I played a set and a half of tennis. I beat a guy who I hadn't beaten before the diagnosis, and I ran him all over the court. And so I checked that off and said, there's something that nobody's going to take away from me. And so I think that focusing on that list of things that brought me pleasure, things that I wanted to retain, things that I wouldn't let this disease take away from me, gave me a source of strength. It gave me a source of conviction. It gave me a source of denial to fight with. And you know, some people call it denial. I don't call it denial. It's a very calculated decision that I made. I didn't deny the fact that I had Parkinson's. I don't deny the fact that I have Parkinson's. I didn't choose to tell people I had Parkinson's until recently, but that was just a choice. It wasn't a denial. The denial was that I wasn't going to be helpless about it. And the most beautiful thing that helped in that fight was to discover, shortly after I was diagnosed, to meet Jackie and David Zid and the good people at Delay the Disease. And I became part of a study, one of the many studies that they've done. I think it was one of the first, right, Jackie? And I was in a program, and I'd always exercised because I was an athlete, and I was always trying to play with younger kids. And so working hard in the gym was no secret to me. And so I went into the gym with a vengeance and worked very, very, very hard, and still work hard, though my schedule's a little crazy these days. But I used to, if they had a class Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and Saturday, I would go an hour before class began. And I would have my own workout, and then I would work out with the class. And I found that when my schedule took me away from the gym and away from Delay the Disease, I felt worse. I definitely felt worse. I am 100% convinced that, that aerobic exercise and the other kinds of skills that they train us to do in terms of balance, you know, in terms of big voices, in terms of making big movements, in terms of coordination, in terms of mental activities, these kinds of things. I am absolutely convinced that they slow down the rate of disease. And I can tell you actually for a fact that my research in the early days when I was in Parkinson's research, the evidence was just beginning to accrue, just beginning to develop on the relationship between exercise and rate of loss of these dopamine neurons that we're all fighting. And so there is, I'm here to tell you that there is good scientific evidence for the principles that are the heart and soul of the Delay the Disease program. But I would say to you, even if I didn't know that, I would do what I do because it gave me something to continue to master. It gave me something to continue to say, yeah, I can go in the gym and I can run up and down the floor, or I can throw a ball, or I can catch, or I can lift a lot of weight. Those were things that I wasn't going to let be taken away from me. And so the gym gives me that opportunity to do that. I would encourage you to stay as active as you possibly can. Go for a walk every day. Go for a walk around the house if you can't, if the weather's bad. Find yourself a couple of things that bring you pleasure and make sure you do them every single day. And caregivers in this room, make sure that your partner does them every single day. And ask them at the end, ask her at the end, ask him at the end, what did you do today, John, that made you feel good? What did you do today? Okay? And if the answer is, okay, I did that right. Yeah. You and I have both done that, haven't we?
Every day.
Yeah, every day. Okay. Well, we're going to stop him doing that. Okay? You have to only do that once a day, and then come up with 2 positive things. Okay? But I think having a list of things that that make you feel good will keep you ahead of this game. Okay? There's a psychological part to this battle, and there's a physiological part to this battle. Okay? And what we've learned over hundreds of years is how interconnected the mind and the body are. All right? And if your attitude's not right, it's going to go faster than your body. Okay? You'll lose this battle mentally before you lose this battle physically. All right? And so you've got to be on top of your emotions. You've got to be on top of your attitudes. You can't become too self-conscious. I just taught a class of 68 students in a big lecture hall, and lectured for an hour and 25 minutes. I would never stop teaching, only because that would be something I love to teach, and that would be something that somebody took away from me. And I won't let that happen. And so I think keeping that list of things that make you feel good. Speaking loudly, okay? I think that when you start to lose your voice, you start to lose a lot of things. Okay? People don't understand you. People don't pay attention to you. You start to shrink. You as a person starts to go away. And so 2 of the things that I focused on very early in this was my eye contact, keeping my face hopefully from not getting frozen, flat, keeping good eye contact, keeping good emotion, and having a big voice. All right? Now, it was easy for me to practice that because I'm a lecturer, I'm a chairman of a department, I have to talk to lots of people all day long, and some of them don't listen to me even when I talk loud. Okay? But some of them do, and so I focus on the voice. And caregivers, if your partner is saying something to you and you don't hear them, tell them you don't hear them. What's that? You can speak louder than that. Okay? Don't let them get away with it. Don't let them get away with it. It's easy, folks. It's easy to give up. It's easy to give up, but you give up so much. Okay? Everybody here has lots and lots and lots to give to each other. Okay? And to let this go when you still have so much life ahead of you, and to give up, because soon as you give up, I can tell you that slope goes like this. All right? And so call it denial. I call it I call it smart, and that is to just not give up and keep positive about things. Do not avoid doing things that you once loved to do just because you're moving a little more slowly. Okay? I'm going to be back on the tennis courts by this summer for sure. And God knows how I'm a left-handed serve, so I toss the ball with this hand. And in fact, that's one of the reasons I went to get a checkup, was because I couldn't control my ball toss as a tennis player. My toss was going all over the place like this, and I thought that there was something wrong with my arm. I'm not a person that gets nervous, and so I didn't think it was nerves, but all of a sudden I couldn't control my ball toss, and I went in, and then we started investigating, and that was it. But I'll be back on the tennis court. I'll be back on the tennis court because that was something central to me that no one can take away from me. When I want to stop playing tennis, I'll stop playing tennis. but Parkinson's isn't going to tell me to stop playing tennis. All right? I travel around the world. I get to travel with Valentina. I'm going to continue doing that. I'm going to continue traveling. And so the opportunity to come here, the opportunity for me to give a little back, is also another part of my formula for beating this disease. Okay? I try to give a little back every time Jackie asks me to come, I come. To talk with my colleagues, my colleagues, and to try to learn from you and to try to give you some advice as to what works for me. And what I would say will work for you is do not become helpless. Caregivers, do not allow him or her to become helpless. Do not allow him to give you that answer all the time. Okay? Just don't stand for it. You can do better than that. I can do better than that. Valentino tells me to give her a different answer. All right? And so at this point, I think I'll be quiet and answer any questions that you might have and comment on it. The one thing I do refrain from commenting on is really medication. Because I don't know your personal histories, I don't know your medical histories, and so it would be inappropriate for me to talk about your meds. Although I can tell you that I continue to experiment with my own meds, and I continue to take fewer meds than I used to see how I feel. And if I'm feeling pretty good, then I drop the meds down a bit. I'm not advocating that you do that without talking to your neurologist, but I don't want to get into a debate as to pramipixole or Carby or what doses or whatever. I can tell you this, that the better you feel, the less dependent you are on some of these drugs. But I'd like to hear from some of you, to hear what how you feel, what makes you feel good. You can practice that. You can practice that. First of all, having things feel good can elicit that. But you can, during the, I remember at times when I'd be brushing my teeth in the morning or standing in front of a mirror, and I would practice smiling or laughing or making big voices and things like that. And so you can practice those kinds of things. But it's not a death sentence. But it does grab your attention, and it should grab your attention. But it's what do you do after it grabs your attention? Do you sit in the chair and say, life is over, I'm just gonna ride it out here, or do you say, hell no, I'm gonna play tennis? You and I will play tennis again. Okay? No, maybe some journal editors might say that, but no, I think it's a serious question you raise, and one that I spend more than a couple moments every day thinking about. Mine is a career and a lifestyle that is heavily dependent upon language and speaking and thinking and complex thinking. And I knock on wood, I don't think there's been, maybe Valentina will say differently, but there's nothing that I did 10 years ago that I don't do right now. I write papers, I publish papers, I travel around the world giving talks. I have found no impact on my cognitive ability right now, and so I'm not planning on it. So now there are different kinds of Parkinson's disease, and some are different threats to cognition than others. But I would say, just like when you're looking for activities to do in the gym, look for activities to do at the desk. Okay, crossword puzzles. If you did those, continue doing them. If you do them slower, do them slower. Any of these games that you can buy books for, I don't know the names of these games, but numbers games and things like that to keep to keep your mind active, to keep it operative. Write a diary. Take a diary. And if you can't write, then dictate it. Okay? But the cognitive effort of recreating, either by writing or by dictaphone, recreating the events of the day and putting them in order and talking about how you felt about them and stuff like that, is a form of mental exercise. And we know this. I don't want to go too long, Jackie, but there are very famous studies called the nun studies with Alzheimer's disease. Do you know about those studies? There's a sect of cloistered nuns that were in, that kept as part of their religious activities, kept diaries. And they were in at high risk for the development of Alzheimer's disease. Several of them were. And the development of Alzheimer's disease in these nuns was much, much, much lower than it should have been. And they attribute it to a lot of the cognitive exercises of keeping the diaries and, saying mass and doing those kinds of things. But just do something mentally. Do something mentally, because losing that capacity then can become a vicious spiral. All right, so you want to feel good about your cognitive abilities, and so whatever it is, sing songs, do crossword puzzles, stay active mentally. Absolutely, for sure, very important. Let me tell you, I've been the recipient of several of Jackie's programs, okay? And I can tell you they are hard, and they are worth every second of it, every second of it. But little things that you can do, when you're walking, take big steps. You do that in class, right? With them, take big steps. If you're standing, stand on one leg for a little bit. If you're in the house, pick things up with one leg, stand on balance with one leg like that. Get in front of the mirror and practice changing your expression, like that. There are lots and lots and lots of things you can do. But my message to you is don't lose the faith, okay? And I don't necessarily mean religious. I mean the faith in you. We're all beautiful creatures, and we all have lots and lots to give to our loved ones and to ourselves. And so fight hard, protect that list, and when you start feeling helpless, then go talk to somebody. Go talk to somebody, talk to me, talk to Jackie, talk to David, talk to your loved ones, talk to somebody. But don't let this vicious spiral start to take away what is so much you, your movement, your language, your expression, your ability to live. And I'm sure that it's hard for you, and it's hard for me at times. But the alternative just stinks. The alternative stinks, and I won't accept it. And you shouldn't either. But I wish you all the very best. Yes, ma'am.
Have you ever been your own caregiver?
Have I ever been my own caregiver?
Since you had your diagnosis.
Yes, I have.
And, then you had to fall into deciding what you were going to do, which
Yeah.
means you had to plan your own day.
Yes.
You didn't have someone stand,
Well, I was my own caregiver for about 2 years for sure. I was divorced several years ago. I was separated from my wife for about 1.5 years before that. And Valentina came from Italy to live with me 2 years ago. So I had about a 2-year period, 1.5 year period where I was my own caregiver, I guess. But I never felt like I was my own caregiver. During that period, Jackie was there for me. at times. I was in the gym 4 days a week, and so I never felt alone. But yeah, I was that way for a while. I like
What do
him.
you think the hardest aspect of that was for you?
The hardest aspect. I talked a lot to myself, and I started to worry about that a little bit. But I would talk a lot just to talk a lot, and just to be loud and move around. And so I would have a little gym in my house, and I work out there. I stayed at work a lot, so. I don't know that I didn't have someone living with me, but I surrounded myself with people that could take care of me and could push me because they cared for me. But I think I don't think there's nothing like having a loved one beside you who cares deeply about you and who can call you on certain things. And say you could do that better, or you're not loud enough, or something like that. But you're in a community where people care about each other, and people like Jackie and David and their staff. You're always with someone. But I like it better since Valentina's here, in so many ways. Yes. Okay. Anything else? Well, listen, I thank you for inviting me. Thank you for listening to me. I hope what I hope is that I didn't, that my enthusiasm that jacks me up, the enthusiasm that jacks me up and that allows me to do the things that I want to do, wasn't interpreted the wrong way. I don't mean to say that your lives aren't hard. My life is hard at times too. But what I wanted to do was to try to communicate an excitement and a positiveness about this, and a fact that when you start to lose those kinds of things, and you start to give way to the disease, then you're giving way to the disease, okay? And we have shown, and I'm a living example of their program, which I've been in now for 6 years. I'm a living example of their program that I think it slows down the disease immensely. My scores haven't changed, and my tremor score goes up a bit, but my other scores haven't changed in terms of getting up, getting down. When I go to the gym on Fifth Avenue, I run up and down the floor. My scores haven't changed in several years. And so I think that's because I work hard. And I think that they work hard with me. And I think we can all do that in our own way. And so please keep the faith. You got to love yourself. You got to be your best friend, your own best friend, and then find somebody to help you along the way. But thanks again for the invite. I wish you all the very best of luck, okay? Thank you.